Hey now Brawlers, my name is Nick, this is Board Game Brawl, and it is the dog days of summer. Now for most people that means going to the beach, spending time with their family, barbecuing, things like that. For board gamers, it means we're in the swing of convention season. And the biggest one of them all is coming up, at least in North America, and that is Gen Con 2014. Hence, this is my top 10 games of Gen Con. Now, let me go ahead and clear up something right away. You might be saying, wow, if you're watching this before Gen Con, you're like, Nick must have got advanced copies of these games, and hence he's giving us his top 10 list. And if you're watching this after Gen Con, you're like, wow, Nick must have been at the con. He must have played these games, and now he's telling us his favorite. Well, no to both. Because I'm not going to be able to go to the con, and I'm obviously filming this ahead of time. I didn't get any advanced copies of any of these games. These are just the top 10 games I am most excited about at Gen Con. But that doesn't really make for a catchy title, so hopefully I didn't deceive you. But, you know, that's a great thing about conventions. There's a lot of really cool games that premiere at these things, and it just gets people excited. I love what's on the horizon for board gaming. So many cool games. I had a really hard time paring this list down to just 10. Let me tell you, my 11 through 15 looked amazing games that I wish I could have fit on the list, but I'm really trying to keep it down to 10 and not do any honorable mentions this time. So just bear that in mind. If one of the games that you think I definitely should have mentioned didn't show up on this list, it's very possible it's in my 11 to 15 or 11 to 20. Now, you know, if you're not familiar with Gen Con, I guess I should start there. Gen Con is the biggest gaming convention in North America, and some people are saying it's now rivaling Essenspiel, which is probably the biggest gaming convention in the world, but Gen Con is really quickly catching up. They are either close to being equal, and some people think Gen Con will actually exceed it in a couple of years. I don't really get into that debate. I really don't care because I'm not going to be able to go to either of them probably for quite a few years. But I think they're both great. Like I said, I love the idea of conventions that are for people to premiere new and exciting board games. A lot of publishers rely on conventions to stay afloat. They go there, they hawk their wares, they build awareness for their products, and that's a great thing. I think if it helps publishers along, it can't be a bad thing. And one of these days, I'll probably go to one of them, if only to play some of these really cool games and meet some new people, because really that's why I'm in this hobby to begin with. So definitely, I am just really excited, even if I can't go to them, to just be able to tell you about some of these cool games coming out. Now, before we get to the actual list for 2014, I thought it might be cool to take a look back at my 2013 list, which was actually the very first top 10 list I did for this channel, and it was very soon after the beginning of my channel. We're celebrating my 1-year anniversary this week as well of the channel. I'm not married or anything, but surprise. But this is my first top 10 list, and to be honest with you, I'm not totally thrilled with it. Looking back on it now, I had a lot of pie-in-the-sky ideas about how some of these games would turn out. A lot of these games still haven't even come out, and I pretty much knew they wouldn't, because a lot of them were just prototypes or demos that they may or may not be showing at Gen Con 2013, but they looked awesome. I just had high hopes for them. But let's go through these right now. So my number 10 was Lost Legends from Queen Games. And I still have Lost Legends on my shelf back here. I picked it up probably a couple of months after I filmed the 2013 top 10 list. And it's a good game. It's a really good game. I don't know why I haven't gotten around to reviewing it yet. I probably played it 5 times. And it's just a very vicious card drafting game. Like a really cutthroat version of Seven Wonders or Seasons. I think my issue with it, and what holds it back from just being a phenomenal game, is that after having played it 5 times, I'm kind of like, I've seen what the game has to offer. This is a common complaint about it. It needs an expansion to stay alive. It really does. But Queen hasn't even announced one as far as I know. So that's pretty depressing. I really hope that they get it in gear and support that game, because it deserves it. It could be an awesome game. As it is now, it's just good. It's still in my collection. My number 9 is Trains and Stations. I did also pick up Trains and Stations soon after Gen Con, and it's turned out to be a pretty big disappointment. I've played it 3 times, no, probably 4 times now, and it's so simple. I don't want to say it's like overly simple. I mean, there's some strategy involved, but it's just not great. I'll probably be doing a review of that very soon, because it's probably on its way out of my collection. So I had high hopes for it. I really like Eric Lang, and the components and the dice is all very cool, but it's just not a very exciting game, not very thrilling. It's very anticlimactic. Generation Hex was my number 8 last year. This is also from Eric Lang. This is a card game that they said they might just be demoing at Gen Con 2013 ahead of a January or February 2014 release. and it still hasn't shown up. Now, I've actually been checking in on that on the threads on Board Game Geek, and it was they're still in the playtesting stages, and I actually signed up, or I put a feeler out there that I would be interested in being a playtester, so we'll see where that goes. I won't be able to tell you much about the game if I'm in the middle of playtesting it, but you know, I'll report back as soon as I know something, because it seems like a really cool card game. My number 7 was Trains. Trains is still in my collection. Not entirely. Oh, there it is, right there. Probably the highlight of this list. It's a phenomenal game. I love it. It's Dominion, but more complex with a little bit of a better theme. It's not totally thematic game, but it really works. That board and putting the cubes out to represent your tracks, just awesome. I really, really enjoyed that game. And there's a new expansion coming out at Gen Con this year. Will it make it onto my list? We'll have to wait and see. My number 6 is Sentinel Tactics, which was like announced the same week, like maybe a day or two before I did my 2013 top 10 list. And now I'm still excited for it. There's a chance that it's not out yet. There's a chance that it will be released at Gen Con this year, that they'll have some copies available for purchase. The thing is, I didn't do the Kickstarter for it either because it didn't look that promising to me once they started showing more and more of the game off, and I was extremely disappointed with Galactic Strike Force, which is Greater Than Game's second release after Sentinels of the Multiverse. So while I'm still excited for Sentinel Tactics, it's kind of a wait-and-see approach on that one for me. Rampage was my number 5, and this was probably the biggest anomaly on the list because it came out, I saw what it had to offer, I saw reviews on it, a lot of people liked it, and my interest in the game just plummeted. I don't know why. I think, again, once I saw more of the game, and once I saw how it was played, and I don't know, I thought it would be more. I thought it would be a little more complex. I thought it would be, I didn't know that it was just be blowing on pieces to knock them over. I just don't have a lot of interest in a game like that. I don't know why. I just thought it would be cooler than what it was. I knew that would be involved. I don't know, but I haven't had much interest to play it. I'm sure I will play it one day, and it'll be a fine game, but I'm just not that excited about it. Number 4 was Asgard's Chosen, and this was another one where I was really excited for it. It's got really cool artwork. I like the theme, the idea of it, sort of a heavier strategic game using the Norse mythology theme. I have Yggdrasil, which is a really cool cooperative game that has that same theme. So I was excited for this one, but again, it ended up coming out, got some really lukewarm to bad reviews, and the price of it was like absurd for what it was involved. It's a very relatively small game with just a bunch of cards and a few tokens, and it was like 50 to 60 bucks. I took a pass on it, so very disappointed in that one as well. My number 3 is Freedom, the Underground Railroad, and that's another one of the winners off this list. It's amazing. I love that game. I kickstarted it very, very happily, and it's gotten tons of praise, well-deserved praise. It's not a cooperative game I'll bust out with everyone because the theme is so heavy, and it is a very thinky, puzzly game, but it is still awesome. I really encourage everyone to give it a try. My number 2 was the Pathfinder Adventure card game, which you will see right above me right there. That game also lived up to a lot of its expectations. Really awesome game. It's so unique. I mean, it's so innovative. I personally voted for it as one of the most innovative games in the Dice Tower Awards for this previous year. Didn't win, but I mean, it's really, really cool. The reason why it's probably not one of my top 10 games anymore, maybe it's hovering close to that, is only because it's a difficult game to actually play with other people. Because I really want to play through the campaign mode. I've been playing it solo most often, and that works. It's very fun, but, you know, I don't always play solo games. I don't always have the time. I'd rather play games with other people, so it's kind of holding that game back. There is a new big box expansion standalone game called Pathfinder Skull and Shackles, which should be coming out at Gen Con this year, I think, or maybe close to it, which I'll just say right now, it didn't make it on my list only because it's just more Pathfinder, and because I haven't been playing with a lot of people, I'm just not as excited about it as I once was. And my number 1 last year was a game from Asmodee Games called Consequential. And I am still excited about this game. They were supposed to have been demoing it at Gen Con 2013. I think they did, but just a little bit. But that was supposed to be ahead of a September-October Kickstarter, which never happened and still hasn't happened. And I'm still not sure if they're even going to have a Kickstarter. They've released some new artwork for it. There's been some more details released by Chris Chislick, of the president of Asmodee Games and the designer of Consequential. And the thing is, they clarified that it's going to be a very heavily based on using your PC or iOS device or Android device to run concurrently with the game, like running scenarios and things like that. And I didn't realize it would be that heavily integrated. It's kind of a turnoff for me. So while they're supposed to be doing more demos and showing off the game more at Gen Con 2014 this year, I am not putting it on the list. The whole delay of it and not getting enough details, and the details I did get not being that exciting, kind of turned it off for me. So we'll see. Maybe I'll play it between now and next Gen Con, and I'll eat my words, and hopefully it'll be an awesome, amazing game. Now we're going to get to the list, but a couple things. There are a couple of, I'll say there's 3 notable omissions from this list, and they're all Plaid Hat games. One of them is Dead of Winter, which I'll just say this. It's Dead of Winter and Downwood Tales, the newest expansion for Mice and Mystics. Now, I was a playtester for both of those games. I played Dead of Winter 11 times. I played Mice and Mystics 10 times. And they're awesome. They're fantastic. Dead of Winter is probably going to be one of my favorite games, period, very, very soon. But the thing is, I've already played them. So I already know they're going to be great. So they're not going to be on my top 10 games of Gen Con as far as my anticipated list. As a matter of fact, I should be getting my copy of Dead of Winter hopefully this week, maybe next week. So I'll even be able to do a review of it, hopefully before the con. So that's why it's on the list. Downwood Tales, really, really awesome. Because it's just more Mice and Mystics, I'm not as excited about it as I am about some brand new games that are coming out. So it didn't make it on the list. And the same thing with the third omission, which would be Summoner Wars Alliances. Love Summoner Wars, excited about the new Alliances set, but it's more Summoner Wars. It doesn't seem like it's changing the game drastically. It just feels to me like more faction packs, which are cool, and they're very interesting factions. They're mixing up, each faction deck is mixing up 2 existing factions, but it's just not exciting enough for me to put it on the list. The other thing I'm going to say, I probably should have said this at the beginning, is that a lot of this information that I got, and I knew some of these games that I'm going to talk about on the list just from reading news stories throughout the year, but there's an awesome geek list done by Eric Martin over on Board Game Geek that is the Gen Con 2014 preview that has almost every single game that's going to be previewed or demoed or sold at the con on this list. Very easy, very simple. Speaking as someone who has done geek lists before, they're a pain in the butt, even simple ones. The fact that he took that much time to put it together is amazing, so I'm very grateful for Eric to having all that information right there at my fingertips to peruse through, and even a lot of the other games I already knew about were from some of his blog posts throughout the year. So major props to him. I'm going to have a link to the preview down in the comments section. So without further delay, thankfully, here's my top 10 games of Gen Con 2014. My number 10 is The Witcher adventure game from Fantasy Flight Games. Now, Fantasy Flight is pretty notorious for keeping their cards close to their chest when it comes to the games that they're going to announce at Gen Con, but The Witcher was announced quite some time ago, almost a year ago, I'm going to say, definitely before the start of 2014, and so it seems like a pretty sure bet that they'll have it for sale at the con. For those of you that don't know, The Witcher is a series of video games. I think they've already announced the 3rd one that is like a really dark, grim, gritty, almost realistic RPG, sort of at odds with the anime-centric RPGs coming out of Japan. This one, I think, is from a Polish developer, and it centers on this guy who's a Witcher. I think his name is like Geralt, something like that. Witchers are like mercenaries for hire that go around and kill monsters. It's probably a little more complicated than that, I'm sure, but it's known for having a very dark but very in-depth, involved storyline with a lot of choices. And in the Fantasy Flight game, you each take control of one of the primary characters, and you're running out on the map having quests. You might have to help each other, you might have to backstab each other, things like that. It seems like a very overused idea, but I like the theme, I like the storyline of it. I really anytime that Fantasy Flight Games, announces a game, period, I'm going to take note. But especially when it is a big, sprawling fantasy adventure game, that is pretty much their wheelhouse. That's what they're known for doing and doing well. I've heard that this game has been compared to Runebound, which is an out-of-print game set in their Terranoth universe like Descent. So I haven't played it, but I've heard that that's a good thing that it's compared to Runebound. And I'm very excited to give this one a try. That's my number 10 game of Gen Con, The Witcher adventure game. My number 9 is Shadowrun Crossfire from Catalyst Games. Now, I'm a big fan of the Shadowrun universe. I played both 4th and I think the newest one is 5th edition, the 4th and 5th editions of the tabletop RPG, because it's just a setting that really appeals to me. It is cyberpunk in the far future, but mixed with fantasy, where you have a certain amount of the Earth's population has been turned into orcs and trolls and elves and dwarves, while there's still humans, and there are hackers and there are wizards and there are, Native Americans took part of the country back and they have shamanistic powers that are like for real, and mega corporations rule the world, and you play Shadowrunners who are trying to subvert them and undermine them, or just make creds, however you want to let your own personal story unfold. And in the Shadowrun Crossfire game, it's a deck building game that seems like it's got some similarities to the Pathfinder adventure card game, where you are actually leveling up your characters permanently. In this case, you're actually putting stickers on them. So at least in Pathfinder, you can put sleeves on your cards and just use a wet erase or dry erase marker on them. In this one, you are permanently altering your cards, and unless you want to work around that some way. But you're gaining karma, which is the experience points of the Shadowrun universe. You're gaining levels, you're going on quests, just cooperatively working together to go through these. Love the theme, love the idea of it. I'm pretty sure they'll have this for sale at the con because people have already started reviewing the game. I am very excited to get it in my collection. That's my number 9, Shadowrun Crossfire. My number 8 is King of New York. Now, King of Tokyo is just an awesome game. It's not the deepest, most thinky, strategic game, but it is a game I can bust out with any group of gamers, and everyone loves it, to varying degrees, to be sure. Sometimes it can go on a little bit too long, but it's a great dice-chucking Yahtzee game where you're giant monsters beating the crap out of each other. And the expansions made it even better, and now you have a new standalone game set in sort of the same universe with King of New York. But this one is actually going to change things up quite a bit. You have new faces on the die, you have new monsters, you have a board where you actually go through the different boroughs of New York and have different game effects, and you're destroying buildings. It seems like they made this into a much deeper game, which I was shocked. I really thought when they announced this that it would just be more King of Tokyo, just another big expansion, but no. This one seems very different. I am very excited for it. They're going to have a very limited amount of copies at the con. If I could talk one of my friends into getting me a copy of it, I will, but it's going to be really, really tough. But either way, I'm going to get this one eventually. I mean, it's King of Tokyo, but with more stuff. How can you go wrong with that? From Yellow Games, my number 8, King of New York. My number 7 is Legendary Encounters, an alien deck building game. Now, if you've watched my channel at all, you know I love Legendary, the Marvel deck building game from Upper Deck. It is just phenomenal. I love deck building. I really like the Marvel universe, I guess, and I love cooperative games. And Legendary was a semi-cooperative game where you're trying to defeat a villain, working together, playing as all the different Marvel superheroes. Now, in Legendary Encounters, they have the alien theme, like the actual movie Alien, Ridley Scott and James Cameron, and you are playing colonial marines who are teaming up to take out the aliens. I mean, it doesn't get more complicated than that, and it doesn't need to be. That's awesome. I mean, I'm not the biggest Alien fan in the world, but it is really cool, and it's such a neat idea for them to come up with. And supposedly you can mix some things from both games together, Marvel Legendary and Legendary Villains, and with this, I mean, they're not totally compatible. You can't just throw something into one of the other games and expect it to work, but you could do something similar to that. So that idea has me excited too. But either way, I really wanted Legendary Villains to be more than what it was as far as gameplay and adding new stuff to the mix. This game is going to be different, so I'm really excited about it. That's Legendary Encounters from Upper Deck. I think it will be on sale at the con, or at least I hope so, which means, because that means that everyone else is going to get it sooner too. That's my number 7. My number 6 is an expansion, and I hinted at this earlier. It is Trains Rising Sun from AEG. I told you before, I love Trains. It's an awesome game, so of course I'm going to want an expansion that just adds more to it. And in this case, not only are you getting more cards to put out in your random allotment, you're actually getting some cool bonus cards that are going to let you get points just for making certain tracks and connecting certain points, which is sort of a Ticket to Ride type thing that they're injecting into the game, which I'm not a big fan of Ticket to Ride, but in this case, I think it's going to work, and it's going to work awesomely. And it's just more trains. How can you not love that? Super excited to get it. Can't wait. Trains Rising Sun from AEG, my number 6. My number 5 is actually a game that I kickstarted, and hopefully I'll be getting right after Gen Con, and that is Argent the Consortium from Level 99 Games. Level 99 is known most for their BattleCon series of games, and this game takes place in the same universe as the BattleCon games. In Argent, it is a worker placement game where you're students or faculty members at a magical university, and you are vying for control. You're trying to be the chancellor of the university. Chancellor, superintendent, I can't quite remember, but it's got amazing artwork, amazing pieces and components. Very, very excited to get a hold of this one. I like what Level 99 is doing. I like their universe. I like their style, their themes. This looks like it's going to be a worker placement game with a lot of theme to it, which I like worker placement as a mechanic, but it doesn't always lead to the most thematic games. Hopefully, this one is different. I have high hopes. They're hopefully going to have it for sale at the con, and like I said, I should be getting my copy from Kickstarter a couple of weeks after, hopefully. That's my number 5, Argent the Consortium. I actually struggled with putting my number 4 this high up on the list, or even on the list at all, but I decided that the designer and the theme was enough to push it all the way up to number 4, and that is Samurai Spirit from Antoine Bauza. Now, Antoine Bauza is, I mean, definitely my top 5 game designers. It's very possible he could be number 1 if I really sat down and analyzed it. I haven't thought about it too much, but he has just produced some of the most fantastic games I have ever played, from Takinoko to Ghost Stories to Hanabi to Kaido. It's just stellar games, and so that enough would make me take note of Samurai Spirit. But the game is also called Samurai Spirit, and you are playing as 7 samurai trying to protect a village from bandits. Now, I love Say Bye to the Villains, Seiji Kanai's card game, where it's essentially like the movie 7 Samurai as well, but that was a pretty light game. Just sort of a light, puzzly, fast card game. This one looks, from what little I know, looks to be like a more complex, heavier cooperative game similar to Ghost Stories. And of course, you can play it from 1 to 7 players, which is just awesome. And the only reason it's not even higher on the list is because they just don't have a lot of information out about it. I'm pretty sure that it's going to be available at Gen Con 2014, but I don't know. Hopefully, they'll be at least demoing it, but it is certainly on my radar. Samurai Spirit from Antoine Bauza, and I can't even think of the Funforge, I think it is, which is another reason to take note of it. That's my number 4. My number 3 is The Battle at Kemble's Cascade from Z-Man Games. That's a very awkward name for what looks like a super cool game. This game basically simulates the shoot-em-ups or shmups that were really popular back in the 80s and 90s and still have a really hardcore following today. Think of games like Gradius and R-Type and Radiant Silver Gun and so many others, countless others that I can think of, where they call them bullet hell games, where you're just running through and getting shot at all sides by cannons, and you got your little ship moving around, and eventually you try to take out a big boss. This game is going to have a lot of those same things. The components look amazing, the artwork looks amazing, some of the mechanics about how the things scroll down and scroll to the side just looks super cool and innovative. I mean, I'm so happy that someone actually had the thought to make a game like this, and it is definitely on my radar. I can't wait to give it a try. I'm pretty sure it'll be for sale at the con, and hopefully I'll get my copy soon afterwards. The Battle at Kemble's Cascade from Z-Man Games, a very hard to say name, but that is my number 3. My number 2 is Abyss from Bombix. And I'm not going to lie, the main thing that even put this on my radar as far as putting it on this list was the artwork and components of this game. I'll admit that I'm superficial in this regard because it just looks phenomenal. Just looking at it, it's gorgeous, high quality artwork, but that does not a good game make. Fortunately, I actually read the rules and it seems even better from a gameplay standpoint. You are like taking control of like these underwater lords in this like underwater society, underwater, and you're vying for control and you're trying to manipulate some of the different lords of the sea and you're going exploring. There's just so many things, but it actually doesn't seem that complicated. It seems very, very cool, and it comes from a good pedigree. Bruno Cathala is the designer of the game, and look, he designed one of my top 10 favorite games of all time, Shadows over Camelot, and he's got a lot of other games that I am super interested in coming out this year. This might be the year of Bruno Cathala, so I am super excited to give this one a try. Everyone is. I mean, it's been at on the hotness list for a long time, and for very good reason, I hope. That is Abyss from Bombix, my number 2 game of Gen Con 2014. And finally, we're to my number 1. And if you've been watching my channel for a while, or if you paid attention to my contributions to other videos and podcasts, then you probably know what my favorite game is. And you might be thinking to yourself, isn't there a brand new game from the designer of Nick's favorite game coming out this year, and shouldn't that be on his list? Well, you would be right, sir or madam, and you would get 10,000 points for guessing correctly that my number 1 is Lords of Zidit from Asmodee and designer Regis Bonesse, and hopefully I'm pronouncing his name even partially correctly. He is the designer of Seasons, my favorite game that is right back here and always close to my heart. No, I'm just kidding. But it really is my favorite game. And now the funny thing is, Lords of Zidit, I don't know how funny it is, but it's interesting. Lords of Zidit is actually a re-release and re-theming of one of Regis's older games, Himalaya. I hadn't even heard of that game, or maybe I did, but I had no interest in the theme whatsoever. But it's a pretty well-regarded game, and he decided to retheme it into the universe of Seasons. Now, no one would accuse Seasons, no one, including myself, would accuse Seasons of being the most thematic game relating to its universe, but a lot of that universe did come out through the amazing artwork and components of Seasons, courtesy of Nayade. I'm sorry, I can't remember what his full real name is, but he is also contributing the artwork for Lords of Zidit, which is also making me take notice of it. And the theme of this one is really cool. You're actually taking control of some of the powerful lords of the Zidit, the place that Seasons takes place, and you're trying to stop all of these like magical creatures and familiars, like the familiars from Seasons that have gone crazy and are attacking the countryside. And you're trying to vie for, by doing so, you're trying to get control of the land for yourself. Now, the components look cool, the artwork looks cool, but the mechanics also seem really interesting as well, because it seems like a very cutthroat game. At the end of the game, if you're not in control of certain areas of influence on the board, you're actually completely eliminated from the running to win. So it's basically last man or woman left standing, which seems really cool. It seems like my kind of Euro game. The same like innovative, interesting, fun kind of essence to it that Seasons had. So very, very excited to get this one. I mean, when I was going through my list, I mean, I had to pair a lot of games off, but there was no doubt that this game was going to be on the list, and when it came right down to it, it had to be my number 1. That's Lords of Zidit from Asmodee, my number 1 game of Gen Con 2014. Well, that's the list, and let me tell you, I am very, very happy with this list. I told you I was a little bit disappointed in my 2013 list, but I think that most of the games on this year's list are just going to be stellar. I think all of them are going to at least be good, and some of them are just going to be fantastic. I really, really believe that. I mean, there's always a chance that there's going to be a dud somewhere in there, but I've got a good feeling about this one. Regardless of that, this is a wonderful time to be involved in board gaming. So many cool new releases coming out. I think this is going to be a phenomenal year overall by the time that we get to the end. I wish that I could actually be at Gen Con and eventually at Essen, but even so, even if I have to play some of these games a little bit later than everyone else, who cares? They'll still be there. They'll still be awesome when I play them. I'll still give you the most honest and straightforward review I can when I get them into my hands. and hopefully there's a lot for you to like at this con as well. If you're going to the con, I'm very happy for you. I'm very jealous of you, but I hope that you have a blast, and I hope that it's not all just going around from booth to booth hunting down games. I hope that you get to actually play a lot of these games, because you know what I always say, get out there and game every day and in every way. Take care.